At breakfast, my son whispered, "Why was Mommy sleeping in the car with that man last night?" My wife went pale. I said, "Tell him the truth." She looked at the floor. I packed his bag, drove to my sister's house, and contacted a custody attorney. I, 37, male, Mark Elliott, had been with Sarah, 35, marketing executive, for 10 years. 10 years of shared mortgages, late-night takeout, the frantic anticipation of Leo's birth, and the comfortable, suffocating rhythm of married life. I was an architect, a meticulous planner, a man who saw the structural integrity beneath the cosmetic facade of everything. That Friday morning, the facade of my entire life was violently stripped away by a single, innocent question from my 6-year-old son. The silence that followed Leo's whisper didn't last a second, but it felt like an epic. Sarah's face went from pale to a ghastly, speckled white. Her coffee cup, perpetually cradled in her slender, ringed fingers, rattled against the ceramic saucer. She didn't look at me, but at the oak floorboards I had installed ourselves 5 years prior, boards I now saw as the foundation of a crumbling structure. "Tell him the truth," I repeated, my voice a low, steady drone that even surprised me. There was no anger, no theatrical rage, only a clinical, final sense of devastation. I was already calculating the required demolition. She looked at the floor because she couldn't look at Leo. She couldn't look at me. The truth, in that moment, was the most expensive currency she couldn't afford. Within the hour, I had packed a suitcase for Leo and a duffel bag for myself. Sarah stood paralyzed by the kitchen counter, offering a string of desperate, broken phrases. "Mark, please, let me explain. It was just a mistake. It meant nothing." I cut her off with a gesture. My focus was already outside the house, outside this ruined life. My objective was simple: secure my son. I drove to my sister Rachel's house. Rachel was my rock, a pragmatic, kind woman who saw through surface-level excuses. When I told her what happened, leaving out the specifics of the betrayal itself, she simply hugged me and said, "You and Leo are safe here. Everything else can wait." It was at Rachel's kitchen table, with Leo happily drawing spacecrafts in the next room, that the architect in me resurfaced. The emotional man, the betrayed husband, was shelved. What took over was the professional, the planner, the structural engineer of human dynamics. I wasn't going to just survive this. I was going to manage its controlled implosion, ensuring the only collateral damage was to those who deserved it. I contacted Mr. Evans, a custody attorney known for his cold efficiency. Our initial meeting was brief, clinical, and reassuring. "Custody is primary, Mark," he stated, adjusting his cufflink. "Everything else, the assets, the divorce, the money, is secondary to stability for your son. We establish a clear, documented environment of safety and continuity. The fact that she was meeting a man in a car at night gives us immediate leverage regarding judgment and stability. We proceed with temporary, sole physical custody immediately." The immediate future was secure. Leo was with me. The house was locked down. The legal process was initiated. But my soul wasn't built for a clean break. I was not content with merely dividing assets and moving on. The 10 years I had poured into her, the years of believing in the solid structure of our marriage, demanded more than a financial settlement. They demanded equilibrium. They demanded ruin. Sarah called, texted, and emailed relentlessly for the next 3 days. I ignored everyone. Her messages quickly devolved from remorse and apology to anger and demands. "You can't just disappear. This is unacceptable. I have rights." She tried to visit Rachel's house. Rachel, bless her protective soul, told her the police would be called if she set foot on the property. During this time of silence, I began to study Sarah. Not the woman I married, but the professional competitor I had failed to see. She was a marketing executive, currently climbing the ladder at a major commercial development firm, Omnia Group. Her career was her obsession, the thing she poured more energy and passion into than she ever did into our family. I knew the corporate landscape of the city well. As an architect, I worked with and competed against firms like Omnia daily. I started discreetly asking questions through old, trustworthy contacts in the development sector. I didn't mention Sarah, just Omnia's latest major project. A massive, mixed-use commercial and residential tower complex called Aurora Heights. It didn't take long to find the man. His name was David Sterling. He was not just a man. He was Sarah's direct superior, the senior vice president of development at Omnia, and the primary driver behind the Aurora Heights project, a multi-hundred-million-dollar undertaking that was set to define Omnia for the next decade. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Their affair wasn't a desperate, meaningless fling. It was a power exchange, a professional coupling cemented by infidelity. They were sleeping together in a car because David was either too paranoid or too arrogant to use a hotel, or because their encounters were quick, furtive moments stolen from their shared, high-stakes professional life. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was institutional. It explained the late nights, the sudden trips, and Sarah's increasing coldness towards me. She hadn't left me for another man. She had left me for a shared ambition. This elevated the stakes of my revenge. Simple divorce and asset division would be a slap on the wrist. I needed to hit the ambition they shared, the structure they were building together, the legacy David was trying to cement, and the career Sarah had chosen over her family. I needed to demolish Aurora Heights, professionally speaking, and ensure the debris rained down on both of them. My first call was to Ben Carter, an engineer I had worked with on complex municipal projects for years. Ben was cynical, brilliant, and owed me a massive favor from a tricky rezoning case I had helped him navigate. "Ben," I said, my voice flat, "I need some information on the Aurora Heights project, specifically the early zoning and environmental reports. I'm thinking of bidding on the interiors, but I hear there might be some issues with the sub-level parking." Ben, suspicious but trusting, said, "Mark, you know those reports are locked tighter than a drum, especially at this stage. Why the sudden interest?" "A feeling, Ben. A hunch that David Sterling cut corners. You know David. He's always rushing the foundation to get to the penthouse party. I'll see what I can dredge up from the Public Records Archive, and maybe I can get a friend at the city planning office to sneak a peek at the original geotechnical survey for that parcel. No promises." It took a week, a very expensive dinner, and the activation of my favor, but Ben delivered. He sent me an encrypted zip file late one Thursday night. The contents were boilerplate, zoning approvals, Phase 1 environmental surveys, preliminary traffic impact studies. But tucked deep inside was the raw geotechnical survey conducted 3 years ago, before Omnia even bought the land. The survey revealed a significant, but manageable, problem. An ancient, subterranean creek bed running directly beneath the proposed main tower footprint. The report concluded that the creek bed required extensive, expensive, and time-consuming deep pile foundation work, a process that would add 6 months and approximately $40 million to the construction budget. The final structural plan, however, which Omnia had submitted for the city's approval and was using to secure their primary bank financing, showed a standard, slightly modified mat foundation. A mat foundation was cheaper, faster, and utterly inadequate for that specific geological profile. It was an intentional, catastrophic structural flaw built into the plan to fast-track the project and save millions. David Sterling was risking a multi-million-dollar structural failure years down the line for short-term profit and speed. And Sarah, as the senior VP of marketing, would have been privy to all core projections and timelines. She had knowingly signed off on a structure built on a sandbar of lies, both professionally and personally. This wasn't just cheating. This was fraud. This was my demolition charge. My plan needed to be surgical. If I went public with Ben's documents, Omnia's legal team would simply bury me in defamation suits, claim the document was forged, or spin it as a preliminary, discarded sketch. I needed a credible, undeniable, and devastating distribution path. The target was David Sterling's relationship with the bank Capital Trust. Capital Trust was providing the colossal construction loan, the lifeblood of Aurora Heights. Banks don't finance unstable structures or fraudulent plans. If the bank pulled the loan, the project dies instantly, and Omnia is left holding an expensive piece of contaminated land and owing millions in sunk costs. David and Sarah's careers, built on this project, would be vaporized. I spent the next 2 weeks meticulously assembling my case. I used my own professional credentials to write a peer review. I created a hypothetical structural analysis demonstrating the inevitable stress fractures and subsidence the planned foundation would suffer within 5 years. I didn't use Ben's raw file. I simply used the data points, borehole results, soil composition, found in that original survey. Data that, once pointed out, could be verified by any independent engineer. I signed the report not as Mark Elliott, but under a pseudonym, Elliott M., independent structural consultant. The final package contained my detailed structural analysis report, a meticulously drawn schematic comparing the required deep pile plan to Omnia's submitted mat foundation, a copy of the original geotechnical summary page showing the creek bed/soil recommendation, heavily redacted to hide the source, but clear enough to raise red flags. The distribution required finesse. I couldn't just email Capital Trust's general inbox. I needed the package to land on the desk of the person who handled construction loan risk assessment, someone who was paid to be paranoid. Using LinkedIn, I identified 2 key people: Ms. Vivian Chandra, the head of commercial risk assessment at Capital Trust, and Mr. Graham Vance, the CEO of Omnia's primary competitor, Apex Developments. I created 2 anonymous Proton Mail accounts. I sent the full, detailed package to Ms. Chandra at Capital Trust. The subject line was chillingly professional, urgent, structural integrity and financial risk assessment of Aurora Heights, Loan 78A04. The body of the email was brief. Ms. Chandra, please find attached a peer review of the structural plans submitted by Omnia Group for the Aurora Heights project. My analysis indicates a critical, concealed flaw in the foundation design relating to the subterranean creek bed identified in the initial site survey. Omnia has intentionally substituted a mat foundation for the required deep pile system to cut costs. This is a fundamental design flaw that exposes Capital Trust's investment to unacceptable long-term risk and liability. I urge you to commission an immediate, independent peer review engineer to verify the attached findings before the final tranche disbursement. Elliott M., the external catalyst. 48 hours later, I sent a highly redacted, less technical version of the report to Mr. Vance at Apex Developments. The email included only the structural schematic and a summary of the creek bed issue, focusing on the zoning implications. Apex wouldn't care about the bank's loan, but they would care about Omnia building a structurally dubious, potentially non-compliant tower faster than them. Vance's reaction would be to leverage the information to slow down Omnia, buying him time. This would pressure the city planning department to move slower, creating a second front of scrutiny. I finished sending the emails from a coffee shop 3 neighborhoods away, deleted the Proton Mail accounts, and calmly walked home to Rachel's house to read Leo a bedtime story. I was an observer now, watching the ripples spread from the precise points of impact I had engineered. The effect was instantaneous and thrillingly silent. For 3 days, nothing. Then David Sterling called Sarah. He didn't use his work phone. He used his personal cell, calling her personal cell. Rachel's house was small, and I was making dinner when I heard Sarah's panicked voice coming through her phone, which she'd left at the house. A mistake I was thankful for, as it allowed me to quietly turn up the volume. I don't know, David. My computer's been wiped since I left. What exactly did the bank say? Sarah's voice was high-pitched, dissolving into hysteria. David's voice, usually a booming, confident baritone, was tight and thin. Chandra brought in a structural team yesterday. They're tearing apart the foundation plans. Someone, an M. Elliott or some damn consultant, sent them a full breakdown of the creek bed issue. They know we're using the mat foundation. Elliott. A small, private smile touched my lips. They've frozen the next disbursement. David, if we lose the funding, if this project stalls, my career is finished. Yours is too. You guaranteed this to the board. I know. Just shut up and tell me who else knows. Did you tell Mark? Did your idiot husband? No. I haven't even spoken to him. He won't answer. He took Leo and just vanished. But David, they can't prove the original survey was fraudulent, right? We covered the original file. They don't have to prove fraud, Sarah. They just have to prove risk. And Vance, Graham Vance at Apex, is making noise to the city planning office about a preliminary compliance issue. It's a coordinated attack. I need to know who this Elliot is. I listened to the rest of the call, a masterclass in panic and finger-pointing. David was terrified of his board, and Sarah was terrified of losing the career she had sacrificed our family for. The project, their shared ambition, was seizing up. The final hammer blow landed on the following Tuesday. I was scrolling through the business news section of the city paper while Leo ate toast. Capital Trust withdraws Aurora Heights financing. Omnia Group shares plummet. The article was clinical. It cited unforeseen geological instability, requiring extensive and cost-prohibitive foundation modification, and a resulting loss of confidence in the project's long-term financial viability on the part of the lender. The project was dead in the water. Omnia was forced to issue a statement acknowledging the difficult decision to place Aurora Heights on indefinite hold. The professional damage was absolute. A project failure of this magnitude doesn't just cost money. It costs reputations. David Sterling, the driving force, would be radioactive in the development world. Sarah, his direct report, who managed all external communication and timelines, would be tainted by the failure, the perceived incompetence, and the sheer volume of negative press. Their power structure was now a pile of rubble. I finally responded to Sarah's last email, the one that had threatened to file a missing person report for Leo. I kept it short. Sarah, Leo is safe and well. The attorney, Mr. Evans, will contact your counsel with the final divorce and custody agreement. Given the current circumstances of the Aurora Heights collapse and the subsequent investigation into Omnia Group's internal controls and leadership, I recommend you secure a new job immediately. You'll need the income to finance the upcoming legal fees. As an architect, I know that if you rush the foundation, the whole building comes down. Goodbye. I hit send and felt the last knot of toxic anger unwind from my chest. The ensuing months were chaotic for Sarah, but structured for me. Mr. Evans used the discovery of David Sterling, the professional misconduct linked to the project, and Sarah's emotional instability during the separation to secure a very favorable custody arrangement. I had primary physical custody of Leo. Sarah was allowed supervised visits only until she established a stable, independent residence and proof of employment. She lost her job at Omnia a month after the project collapsed. David Sterling was forced to resign a week later. I heard through the grapevine that the financial losses were severe, and Omnia was considering suing David for negligent misrepresentation. Sarah tried to fight me legally, demanding the equity from the house, which I happily agreed to split, as money was never the objective. But her fighting lacked conviction. She was broken, not by the loss of the marriage, but by the loss of her identity and ambition. She realized, too late, that in choosing her affair and her professional shortcuts, she had given me the blueprints to her destruction. I didn't seek financial ruin for her. I sought professional and emotional ruin, tied directly to the very thing she betrayed me with. I gave her the truth she refused to give Leo, the realization that the life she was trying to build on deceit was, literally and figuratively, structurally unsound. 6 months later, Leo and I moved into a smaller, cozier house near Rachel. I took a sabbatical from my own firm to focus entirely on Leo, rediscovering the joy of simple blueprints. Planning a backyard fort, designing a new morning routine, building a new, solid foundation for two. I never saw David Sterling again, and my encounters with Sarah were brief, mediated handoffs. The betrayal had burned me to the ground, but in the ash, I found clarity. I wasn't just a victim. I was the architect of my own future and, justifiably, the architect of her controlled demolition. It was a cold, lonely path, but as I watched Leo kick a football in our new, sunlit backyard, I knew the structure I had protected, my son, was safe, standing firm on a foundation of unassailable truth. The equilibrium was restored. The price of 10 years of deception had been paid in full, and the only thing left was the silence of a finished construction.